A fitting way for a legend to say goodbye to his home fans as Ben Roethlisberger picks up a victory over the franchise he's owned the most throughout his career. Ben with a win over the Cleveland Browns here Monday Night Football and capping off at least his career in Pittsburgh. We'll see next week, but it certainly feels that there's no more likely or signs point to this is the end of the line for Ben Roethlisberger as he cried and walked off the field, a winner against the Cleveland Browns. Steelers win it 26-14. This is your Steelers postgame show here on Pittsburgh Sports Live and Steelers Now. I'm your host, as always, Mike Asti, and I am joined by media personality Daniel Dudley, who some of your Pittsburgh sports fans may know from his past days as a reporter here in the Pittsburgh sports scene as well, as we are going to recap this game and obviously talk some Ben Roethlisberger again. Ben, a solid day, but most importantly, a win for the Steelers in his final game as a member of the Steelers here at Heinz Field. So, Daniel, to start there, and this was the story leading into the game, and I was even surprised a little bit last week that Ben actually switched gears and said all signs point to and likely. He had danced around it for weeks on end prior to that, and a lot of us thought this would be the end of the line. Some thought he wouldn't even play this year, but he never was definitive with that until, I guess, as close as you can get with those comments and then crying here tonight. How would you say Ben Roethlisberger is remembered for you? How do you remember Ben Roethlisberger's career as a Pittsburgh Steeler? How do you remember his legacy, his legend overall? It's a roller coaster ride for some. Some even criticize him trying to push himself to come back this year. Some remember maybe the early days where he wasn't as liked. And then this second half where it's kind of been a more popular Ben, but less team success. The numbers are there. The 2 rings are there, obviously going in the Hall of Fame. To open up this show, we have to do it this way. How do you remember Ben Roethlisberger's career as a Pittsburgh Steeler?
I mean, he is the guy who brought the Steelers into relevance for a new generation. Because if you think about it, like I'm 36 years old, right? So right. My friends who are Steeler fans, they all would just talk about the 70s and when they won championships then. Right. And I'm like, we are like, what? And, we're talking like in 99 when we're high school and we're doing these sports arguments and all that stuff at, right. Lunch and all of that. It's like, you think about that stuff and we were, they're talking about the 70s. They're arguing about that. But when Ben comes, he brings the championships. You can no longer make fun of those old Steeler fans and say, oh, you guys don't win championships and Cowboys this and whatever team you like. He brought those in. I will remember him as being the person who brought the Steelers into relevance and gave them some championship footage that wasn't grainy, that wasn't in black and white and wasn't just, old footage. He brought them into that, 2006, 2008, 2010. I mean, he brought them into all of that and he will always be remembered as that. And I think that's what you saw tonight. And I'm happy that, and you pointed out like him saying that all signs point to him retiring. Right. I'm happy that he did that. It's like all-time greats should all do this. No one should do what like Dirk Nowitzki did and just not say anything. And then we all kind of have to like push him out the door. I think all greats should get that moment that he got tonight, even though this should have been the last game, but we got to do the whole thing next week. But this is how all-time greats should all go and get the chance to go out like that, win or lose. We all should know when your last game is, and we all should be able to give you that respect.
It does seem a little better. I mean, I remember when Ken Griffey Jr. just basically said, no, and then just drove cross country from Seattle to Florida. It's like we're in May. It's the middle of a season. Like, this sucks. I mean, it's just really not what you want here, selfishly, even as a fan of the guy. So, it does feel like that kind of added something to this. It allowed the national broadcast, the fans here, you get thank you, Ben's chance to open up this game. It made this a whole celebration of Ben Roethlisberger, even for the opposing players, where I don't know if you would have had it to this level if he didn't come out there and make it so clear. Daniel Dudley joining me here, our Steelers postgame show. The Steelers are winners. They are still somewhat alive in their playoff lives, but as Daniel alluded to, Ben's going to play. We've even talked in the press box that maybe he should end it here officially, but they do have the weirdness, 8% chance. They need Jacksonville to win. They need to win. It's very unlikely, but I'd imagine he's going to play because there is that glimmer of hope in that game against the Ravens where he will officially end things, but does end it here. Does anything change for you for Ben by coming back this year and even the way this season has gone at all? Because Ben in this game, it's another one of those kind of more of like a game managing night for Ben. Only 123 yards passing, 24 for 46. A very weird spread there, a touchdown, an interception, an okay night for Ben, but nothing special. But there were some that thought he should have hung it up last year. He comes back this year, does take a pay cut. This season doesn't go nearly like maybe he thought. And yet it still puts this franchise in a position of doubt for the future because they still don't know what they have in Mason Rudolph. They still don't know what's going to be there after Ben.
Mike, they know what they have in Mason Rudolph. Please stop.
They claim they don't, but maybe they do. But you get what I'm saying. There's still this doubt there that maybe this could have been finalized a year before.
It could have been, and it should have been, but it wasn't. And he came back, and like he still did some Ben magic. You know,
did Ben coming back put this franchise a year back at all? Did it kick the can?
They put themselves back because they could have moved in the draft and drafted a quarterback and started made some moves in the future. They didn't do that. That's not Ben's fault for doing that. That's not Ben's fault. Like, it's not like they were drafting number one or something and they needed all this cap space. They weren't doing that. They didn't even make strides to do that. So, like, that's not Ben Roethlisberger's fault. Like, he came back because he's like, I looked at the other guys here. He's like, I'm not competing with them. And it showed. As bad as Ben was this year, it's like when he wasn't there, did you want the other guys? No. And he knew that too. I feel like if there were any kind of competition where Ben would have lost his starting position, I don't think he would have ever came back. Because I just don't think Ben's ego would have let him do that. And that's not even shade to Ben. I don't think that would have ever happened with him. So
it almost feels to me, in shades of Ben as well, is he couldn't let that last moment be the meme that was circled all over the world of him sitting on the bench crying with Pouncey trying to console him, and they lose with all the turnovers and interceptions against the Browns in a playoff game, which likely is still, for Browns fans who want to brag about something, you lose this, you've lost the last 20 years, but they still get the last playoff game for Ben likely to be a victory over Ben, and he probably didn't want to go out on that note. Granted, you lose Pouncey, you lose pretty much all your friends in the locker room. I don't know if he had thoughts of grandeur, thinking the season was going to go any different. This is kind of how I thought it would go. But nonetheless, Ben did come back for one more year. And yeah, certainly the best option they still had. And the Steelers will have to now go on a journey to try to replace him if that's even possible here. Daniel Dudley joining me here as we wrap up this Steelers game, this Monday Night Football game. But most importantly, Ben Roethlisberger's career as a Steeler, at least as a Steeler starting a home game in Pittsburgh, does have that game against the Ravens to wrap up the season coming up. To go to the chat here, and I do want to get your thoughts on this as well in terms of Ben before we maybe get a little bit into this game and maybe even the Browns. But a lot of conversation right now in our chat of Ben Roethlisberger and where he ranks all time. We both are around the same age. You dated yourself. You're a little bit older than me, a couple years older than me. And we've obviously experienced a lot of Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Even Bill Cowher brought up on the Manning cast tonight of that 2004 draft class. Eli Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers, all likely going to be in the Hall of Fame someday. And of course, Peyton getting there, and just the whole lineage of our whole childhood, just tons of Hall of Famers and great quarterbacks prior to that, before we were even born as well. Not that you have to do an all-time rank list here on the spot, but where does Ben kind of stand for you in that pantheon beyond the Steelers and beyond that conversation with Bradshaw and stacking the rings, but Ben has all the stats? For you, in terms of all-time NFL, what does Ben mean to you in the history of the game? If you're going to try to somehow rank him and compare him with the Unitas's, Montana, Peyton Manning, Favre, Marino, Elway, the list can go on and on.
I mean, he's top 10. Like, I don't think there's any question about him being top 10. Because and you can go for the stats and look at the Super Bowls and stuff, but just the way that he played. Like, when I do these top 10 lists, I think of people that I enjoyed watching play.
That's part
football.
of it. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, I enjoyed watching Ben play football. I enjoyed him being so big and so mobile. I hope that people go back and look at Ben in 2005, 2006, when he's so big, but then he's mobile, and we haven't seen anything like that before. And and then now, you've seen your Cam Newtons, you've seen your other big guys, your Josh Allens and stuff like that. But back then, you didn't see that at quarterback, and that was so cool at the time. And so exciting, and just the way that he's able to the last minute comebacks and all of that, and you never thought the Steelers were out of a game. Just he is top 10 for sure.
He fit Pittsburgh so well as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, you can talk Tom Brady and Manning, and certainly Brady ended up fitting Belichick perfectly. They had their rivalry, but he fit that perfectly. Manning fit what the Colts were trying to do, where they let him kind of audible all the time when he opened up his career. Ben Roethlisberger fit the Steelers. Could you imagine Ben trying to deal with Bill Belichick and Ben hanging out? That wouldn't have worked. Ben Roethlisberger fit exactly the Steeler way, really. It's cliche to say it, but that gritty player that, yeah, he had to be elusive and make up for some poor offensive lines, and he couldn't do it at almost 40, but he certainly could do it in his 20s and his prime and led them to championships doing it. So, yeah, Ben kind of felt that vibe and that aura of a Steeler quarterback more than any other, regardless of where he would rank. And I think something that certainly supports top 10 at minimum, 3 quarterbacks in league history, 60,000+ passing yards and 2 or more rings: Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger. Yeah. Insane to have that be the case, really. It still sounds crazy, and it really even sounds crazy to Ben when you talk to him as well. Daniel Dudley joining me here, our Steelers postgame show, mostly wrapping up Ben Roethlisberger's career as a Pittsburgh Steeler, at least in terms of his home games here at Heinz Field. And Monday Night Football goes out with a win over the Browns, who he's owned, to say the least, in his career, with the exception of that playoff game last year. But there were 2 other players that emerged in this game that we also got to talk about. They're not named Ben Roethlisberger, and they're not retiring by any means. Number 1, TJ Watt, who is now a sack away from the single season sack record in the NFL. We were kind of freaking out trying to wrap up coverage and looked to my colleague. If TJ gets another one, we got a whole nother story to do, because he was 1 away from Michael Strahan, who, you look at TJ's missed games this year and what he's built himself up into. It feels like now the Defensive Player of the Year award is finally going to be his after being runner-up and being the bridesmaid so many years. How great is TJ? How important is he? And how much of an anchor can he be for the future of this defense? Because despite TJ's greatness, this defense has had their issues this year. This team is likely not a playoff team. That'd be really the only thing that could hold TJ back from getting that award. And you're looking at 20+ sacks in a historic season, a historic career, 70+ already, one of the fastest ever to get there. And I don't want to say it's all for naught, but team-wise, it kind of has been to this point.
Yeah, but not really. I mean, he's having a great season. The Steelers aren't a terrible football team.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
They're an average team.
They're an average team. Right. They're an average team. We don't know where they're going to go from here, but the thing is, like, as much as we love Ben tonight, Ben hasn't been that great this season. This team still is, a mediocre football team. They're not the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you think about what this defense has done in the games that they've kept them in.
They did tie Detroit, but I get it was.
That's a rough one. But let's not talk about that. Let's just talk about this defense and the games that they've kept them in against good teams. You're like, Steelers are going to get blown out tonight, and they didn't. And that's because of guys like TJ Watt. So, and you look at him tonight, and I'm so happy he did this on national television tonight. Even though it's a Browns team that half the team wanted to play, half the team's probably playing for incentives like Jadeveon Clowney.
Almost stole the show from Ben. Really, like borderline almost stole the headlines.
He really almost did, because I don't know who it was that stole the sack from him late in the game. But it was like, oh my God, he's about to break the record.
I think it was Highsmith. Yeah,
that's who it was. Yeah. And he was like, he's about to break the record right here. And then we're not talking about Ben at all. But
probably not. Yeah,
but that didn't happen. So, I don't think it's for naught. I think it's people saying like this team and showing free agents that like, this team is ready to go. They're just going to need that quarterback. But this team has everything else ready around it, ready to go.
Yeah, certainly, and he's an anchor, and you want to have that linebacker forced anchor defense, and they certainly have that with TJ Watt. Now, on the other side of the football, and this is a rookie, that obviously is going to be around for a while, or you at least would hope if you're a Steeler fan, you're at least going to have a few years out of him. That's kind of where it caps out with rookie running backs. But Najee Harris, 1,000 total yards weeks ago, 1,000 rushing yards in this game, breaks Franco Harris's single season record for rushing yards. But oddly enough, a bit of a polarizing conversation on how you would evaluate his rookie season or what the future of him as a back for the Steelers is, because only averaging 3.7 yards per carry, despite all of these numbers, the offensive line has been porous this year. They've been inexperienced. It's just been a cast of characters that has not certainly helped him. And there were even people, and I'll admit this was even something that I said at the time during the draft, that maybe despite Najee's greatness, you can't go running back because you only have a few years with him, and then you got an offensive line that's going to be so bad you're wasting it. How would you evaluate Najee Harris to this point? What do you think of Najee Harris? And is this offensive line even holding him back from even being greater? Because you look at the numbers, they're there, but the offensive line hasn't been good, and the average per carry still is kind of off for an elite running back.
But tonight you got to see you got to
he
see
balled out.
What he can do.
Right.
And yes, it was against a Browns team that may have sort of cared, sort of not, but still you got to see that, because if you look this season, I feel like you're going to get to know a lot more about him next season if they have a quarterback who can actually do something. Ben Roethlisberger we love Ben tonight, but like this season, Ben throwing the ball down the field, it's like you weren't scared of him. Right. You weren't worried about him going play action. That wasn't doing anything. It's like, and even with Najee, who had a great game tonight, and it was awesome tonight. I mean, I don't know when the last time a running backs had more yards than both quarterbacks. I don't know when the last time that was. ESPN Stats and Info helped me out with that one, but like, my God, like I couldn't believe that when I saw it at the end of the game. I was like, that's crazy. I don't know when the last time that's happened. So I love him. I think he's gonna be a great Steeler for however many years that he can be at the top of his game. Because like you said, with running backs, but I mean, I think if he has a quarterback who can throw the ball down the field and they can spread things out, I think he's gonna be great.
Yeah, Najee Harris, 188 yards on the ground, including a touchdown, 3.7 yards per carry on the season, but 6.7 in this game. So he did ball out and show what he maybe really could do. That's 188 on 28 carries. Ben only threw for 123, and Baker threw for 185. So just barely over Baker, certainly over Ben. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's the weirdness of that game earlier in the year. Probably ESPN Stats and Info can tell me that that Mac Jones 3 pass attempts where they basically didn't have any passing yards. That probably literally might be the answer. Because Josh Allen was bad in that game as well. Yeah. But in all reality, excluding that weird game where Belichick just taunted us with his fandom of Navy, this hasn't happened that often, and it doesn't happen, every day. So yeah, a weird game from Najee, but certainly shows what maybe he can do behind a decent showing from the offensive line. The concern obviously is not only the shelf life of a running back, but if he'll even choose to stay around, because usually 4 or 5 years you're hitting another deal. Who knows? Now, on the other side of the ball here, Daniel, it's the Cleveland Browns. They are the opponent in this game. This was a game the Steelers did win 26-14. This was a game that actually there was a while here at the end where Cleveland maybe was mounting a comeback. You talk about the Steelers being an average team. Cleveland's an average team, lesser of the two, but the Steelers have tied the Lions. Weirder things could have occurred in this game that wouldn't have shocked anybody. It was a close game when they played earlier in the year as well, and we know what happened last year. In terms of this AFC North division and the Ravens still having Lamar and still being a veteran team, but also struggling, and then now Joe Burrow and the Bengals kind of grabbing the bull by the horns and winning the division, how do you see the future of this division, and how do you even see the future of the Cleveland Browns, the opponent in this game? Because I just was sitting in on some of those visiting post-game press conferences. I almost sent you the link to try to get you in those, just to see if you want to be entertained before this while you're waiting for me, because all of it was Stefanski and Baker and about the future of the team and if he's going to play next week. But there's a whole debate on if Baker is even the guy for Cleveland. And last year, 365 days ago, he led them to a playoff win. So where does the future of the Cleveland Browns franchise stand? The future of this division stand away from the Steelers, who need to fix themselves? But a lot of these opponents, is kind of besides Cincinnati, need to fix themselves too.
It looks the same as it's always been. It's been the past decade, and going into this one, it has been the same. Right. It's Ravens, Bengals, Steelers, whatever they do. And the Steelers are, because they don't have the mainstay at quarterback, we'll see what they do. But like, I'm not putting them below the Browns.
Sure.
Like, we know what they do. They've averaged 5 wins a season since they came back. They've averaged 6 in my lifetime. Like, that's what they do. You know what I mean? So when people had expectations, it's like, can the Browns string together 2 good seasons in a row first before people have expectations over this? And it's like, Baker's a quarterback that nobody really likes that much. No one really thinks he's that good. And then this season, it's like, oh yeah, they can't. No. Once money's on the line, it's like, no, that can't happen.
What went wrong this year? Because this led to OBJ getting himself out of town. He's with the Rams now, able to do more with the Rams than he did with Cleveland in a year and a half. Baker clearly didn't have a good year this year. Stefanski, who people thought was a coach of the year a year ago, now they want to fire. A year has changed the course of this whole franchise to get kind of back to what you were saying, the old Cleveland Browns. They Cleveland it up again. But last year they won a playoff game, and some thought they had a chance against the Chiefs, even though they eventually got mollywopped. What's happened?
Dude, the running game. Like, Chubb and Hunt were unstoppable last year. This year, injuries, different things, and then it comes into Baker's hands to win football games. That wasn't the case the year before. It was the running game, and then Baker's great. It's like, get a lead, and then Baker's great. But this year, coming from behind, and they said that stat during the game that, like, when the Browns are down 8 in a game, they're 0-24. I was like, 8 points? Like, yeah. 8 points? Like, we see the Jets make comebacks in games, and they'll go, you know, I don't even understand that stat. I was like, this is even sadder. Right. Like, to know that, like, the Browns, it's tough. It's tough. Do you
believe in Baker?
No. It's all starting all over.
They're going to have a decision to make of whether they're going to pay this man. And obviously it doesn't have to necessarily be the bag they would have been paying him if he ended up with another postseason run and got them in the playoffs this year, another Pro Bowl season. That didn't happen. If you do bring him back, it'll be at a reduced rate, but there is a whole argument of you bring him back because you don't have to give him the bag. And then you try again, since they weren't great, but they were probably good enough where they're not going to be drafting a top flight quarterback, depending on where they fall in the draft. This is just a horrible situation the Browns are currently in here. Whether you believe in Baker or not, they might be pigeonholed into having to bring him back.
Hey man, they got Myles Garrett, and hopefully he can just, I don't know, can he play quarterback at all? He seems to be able to do everything else. I mean, because you're looking at, we were talking about TJ Watt earlier, like on the other side. I mean, every bit is good. Every bit is great. So you would hope that they can figure something out, and this can be a fun defensive rivalry, and the division can have 4 great teams in it instead of just, 3 good ones and the Browns being terrible. But, like, they're going to start over. They got to start over again because Baker's not it. And I feel like they should know that. Maybe they won't know that, but I feel like everyone around him knows that he's not the guy. And it's tough to start over again. I don't know what's coming in this year's draft. And, I don't know if Kenny Pickett is the savior or something, but I don't know. And he won't be there when the Browns are going to draft anyways, because they decided to be mediocre. So it's, dude, but they're going to be starting over again. It's going to be stable Browns until they find their guy. And it's funny watching, Ben's send off tonight in Heinz Field and knowing that could have been your guy. I believe that like Ben Roethlisberger would have been great in Cleveland? I have no idea. No clue. You have no clue. But like, when you look at it, you had a chance at it. You didn't take him. And like, this has been your, that jersey with all the names, and you're about to add another one.
And to paint the accurate picture, the man's from Ohio.
Yeah.
The team that grew up closest to him, which I'm going to guess he rooted for as a kid, the Browns. And if he was drafted by the Browns, it's very unlikely that he wins a championship that soon. It's very unlikely that his rookie year season in the AFC title game. He was drafted into a great situation, like Hall of Famers often are. The Steelers were good around him. He was able to pick it up and be able to eventually become an elite quarterback and a Hall of Famer. That could have been a situation that was impossible at that time with the Browns. And maybe, he would have been long gone by the time they finally got good. So, it's situations. It's a part of your legend as well. So it was the best case scenario for Ben to be drafted by the Steelers and not the Browns, but they could have had him. So that's something that's always going to be something in Browns fans' minds as well. Now, Daniel here, We started off talking about a Steelers quarterback that ended his career, or at least as a starter for the Steelers at home in this game, basically ending his Hall of Fame career. We've talked about just now the future of the Browns position here. I do want to kind of close up shop the future of the Steelers quarterback position. There is a debate that exists on what the Steelers should do, and Aaron Rodgers keeps flaming this fire with going on Pat McAfee, our WVU alum colleagues podcast literally every day. And I feel like just to kind of stick it to us in Pittsburgh media and make our lives harder and talk about how he loves Pittsburgh randomly. I can't imagine he's ever been to Pittsburgh outside of playing the Steelers, but apparently he loves Pittsburgh, loves Permane sandwiches, loves the Strip District. Who knows? He keeps bringing it up. Russell Wilson obviously is in a dispute with the Seahawks. His future's in doubt. Derek Carr, maybe the same thing with Vegas. There are veteran quarterbacks out there that may have a new home next season, maybe not. There are lesser known veterans that are out there that may need a new home that you won't have to give up much to get. They've done that before. And then, of course, you mentioned Kenny Pickett and even Howell with North Carolina declaring for the draft as well. He's that other guy. It's not a deep draft class as well, though. Mason Rudolph's the only one signed for next year. So right now he'd be starting week 1 next year. The smart money probably says that still happens. If nothing else can work for the Steelers, then it probably will be a rough road next year. What should the Steelers do to kind of fix things at quarterback now post Ben? And what do you think they're going to do? Because this is an off season of doubt at the future of the quarterback position. And I really don't feel like the right answer is out there and that this is going to be a successful road the Steelers are going to be able to go down here for a while.
I mean, of course, can you get Aaron Rodgers? Yes, you go get Aaron Rodgers. There's not one team in the league that's like, well, can we get Aaron Rodgers? We're gonna go get Aaron Rodgers. I don't think he's gonna leave though. I don't. Right. I'll be honest with you. I just don't. I think he's gonna they'll make peace whatever way, unless this thing ends horribly. I don't know. Like
it feels like unless he wins a championship, he's complained every single year.
Yeah, but I don't. This thing, if they go to the Super Bowl, I don't see him leaving.
What if they
that's
don't?
Without him winning? If they don't, I mean, depends on how much they hate each other, I guess. I mean, I don't know.
I just don't see, even if they don't, the Steelers being that team. It's not a Steeler thing to do to go, like as Snoop Dogg said tonight, you got to go get Aaron Rodgers. They're not playing fantasy GM. That's not a Steelers thing to do.
Because there's a lot of teams that are a quarterback away. Like, I mean, the 49ers are a quarterback away.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and they're a team that still make the playoffs, but like he could go there. Like they're not in love with their guys. And I think that's where he would end up going if he went somewhere, or Vegas or something like that. The Pittsburgh thing doesn't really make much sense to me with him. Now, Russell Wilson, on the other hand, I could see that happening, but I don't think they should go that route. I think they should try to find the guy that is not Mason Rudolph. Okay. The first thing they need to do is like clear themselves of the quarterback that they have on the roster and just start and start over and figure out some people who can manage the game. Like you do have a running back, you do have a defense, you do have pieces here that you don't have to just like start Mason Rudolph. You're not rebuilding completely here. You're just trying to find of course you're trying to find a Hall of Fame quarterback, but like you're trying
it only took them 25 years to do it the last time. Like I mean, it wasn't easy to get Ben again.
Yeah, I don't think you're gonna, maybe you fall into a situation like because New England Patriots, they're getting Mac Jones. I don't know how good he is. I just know he fell into a solid situation. I don't know how good he is opposed to the other guys. I know Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence are in terrible situations. I don't know how Mac Jones would have done in those. You know what I mean? It's like I don't know how good they would have done as the Patriots. Maybe they would have been better. I have no idea. But like they just need to find somebody who can manage. And if that comes in a veteran, cool. But I don't think it has to be one of the big names that are out there. I don't think it needs to be that. And I honestly don't think one of the big names wants to come here and possibly fail. Like, why would you want to come to Pittsburgh and I wouldn't want to be Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh and failing. I wouldn't want to be Aaron Rodgers and his attitude in Pittsburgh and failing, because at least you'll like Russell Wilson if he's failing in Pittsburgh. But if Aaron Rodgers comes to Pittsburgh and fails, yikes.
Well, Aaron Rodgers is going to complain about it every single week.
Not going to be good.
and I'm not sure if these guys haven't watched the Steelers offensive line or what they're watching, if they happen to catch any of these games. But for an aging quarterback that maybe wants to go for another year or two and try to grab a championship at the end because his team's not getting it done for him right now, the Steelers' offensive line doesn't screen to be helping that case.
No.
So I'd be a little concerned as well if I were one of those players. But yeah, there are veteran quarterbacks out there. None of these are going to make anyone excited, but Mitch Trubisky, Tyrod Taylor, Marcus Mariota has been brought up. These are guys you could bring in. That kind of is the old school Steeler. Kevin Colbert's still the GM as we're currently speaking. That would be a bringing in of a Byron Leftwich, Michael Vick, Charlie Batch type of thing. If you kind of have a safety net, Deshaun Watson would be maybe one you can get really cheap because who knows what's going down if he plays again.
Yeah, I don't know.
That would be one out there. That would
there.
be another one out there. Yeah, he's there. Yeah, and that would be a whole nother polarizing conversation, I'm sure. But they potentially need a bridge or who knows what, because it does feel like the Kenny Pickett's, the Sam Howell, and then who knows what in the draft doesn't seem to be falling to the Steelers as well, kind of like the Browns. They were maybe too good to actually fix the franchise this year, but not good enough for this year to kind of mean anything as we're currently speaking here. Daniel, I definitely appreciate the time. I was happy to get you on. This game wasn't as late for you as it was for me and all of us here. So you were a perfect guest for this particular post-game show here to wrap up Ben's career here off of Monday Night Football win. Any final, I don't always do this, but any final words, whether it be on Ben or this game or just anything this year? I mean, obviously, hey, if you want to make a joke about Antonio Brown, go ahead and have at it. Obviously, that's a whole nother show based on the WWE soundtrack of this week in NFL season and his actions last week.
I mean, hey, speaking of WWE soundtrack, that song that he put out, I'm telling you.
I saw your tweet. You didn't mind it. Yeah.
If you were working out to that song, if you were running to that song is perfect. That song is perfect. If that is
better than Le'Veon Bell's tracks in the past.
Yes, 1000%.
Okay.
That song was like produced very well. So I don't know who AB is paying to produce these songs.
Well, he's been off a while. He had the whole suspension with the COVID card and the fake COVID card. So he's actually had some time to do this.
It's somebody who's actually knows what they're doing. I don't know. That song, work out to that song. I'm telling you.
Maybe he just wanted to be done with football and figured I'm just going to have a crazy antic that'll allow me to promote my song more. Maybe that was what he was planning the past few weeks. I mean, I don't know. To connect the dots to make this conversation relevant to the show, he actually said before the game in one of his weird cameos that somebody freaking paid for, because if it's a cameo, you're paying. So this is insane. The guy Patrick he was talking to in that video, he actually paid for that video. But Antonio Brown doesn't think Ben's done. He actually thinks Ben's playing next year. So that's AB's prediction.
Antonio Brown thinks he's playing next year too. Yeah. And I wouldn't put my money on that. But isn't that bizarre though? Like I can remember, and this is my final thought. Like Ben Roethlisberger means a lot to me because when I was first, starting and going in the locker rooms and all that and had no idea what I was doing or where I was going, Ben was the constant. Ben was there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And my whole time reporting and doing shows in Pittsburgh and all of that, like Ben was there, and Ben was somebody that you talked about every week. Like players came and went on a lot of different teams, you know what I mean? And Ben was just kind of that constant guy. And I remember being in like scrums, like arm to arm with Mark Cabali and everyone else, and just like trying to get some question out of Ben and him not giving us any answer at all, because Ben was very good at that. And I just mean, Ben was just someone important. But with the Antonio Brown connection was that like, what I remember of Antonio Brown was the guy who just practiced harder than anyone I've ever seen after practice, and other people were coming up to him and being like, and like offensive linemen were coming to him and practicing with him after, and they were training with him after practice. I just remember how hard of a worker he was.
That's the saddest freaking thing of the AB story. He might be the hardest working athlete I've ever been around, and he's going to get no credit for it because he became a lunatic.
And it sucks because I wish more people knew that before, because I don't think a lot of people knew that. Like they just knew he was great. Everyone just knew he was great. Jerry Rice, great, whatever. He was just one of the greatest. But like, I just wish people knew how hard that guy worked. And like, when you're standing there at practice and he's just doing drills by himself, and he's just doing all this stuff that you're not seeing anybody else do. And you're like, and then whenever he just blew up, you're like, yeah, that's why. Like when you watched him every day, when you're at practice every day, you watched him, and he just blew up like that. But yeah, and it's a bummer. The AB thing just bums me out. Other than the song. Yeah, the song's great.
He probably got more downloads because of what happened on Sunday, the night of the release of the song.
Yes.
He still actually blocks me on Twitter, so I had to scan other accounts to be able to actually see what you were talking about. Yeah, that's a fact. Yeah. It's just a weird connection, of course. They're from some former Ben teammates here in attendance. Not AB, because apparently he was at the Brooklyn Nets game. So those rumors did not come true. Ben was
courtside.
Yeah, AB was not here in Pittsburgh for the game, sitting courtside. Yeah, and of course, I don't know if you were out there and experienced any crazy AB stories yourself. I mean, I certainly had the one where I was on the lawn of St. Vincent. The man comes down in a helicopter and then stands in front of us and literally says, "Why do you guys always crowd me more than anybody else? You guys are so obsessed with me." That was his obsessed with me line. And, we're also, you're the only one who showed up in a helicopter. We all drove here. You show up in a helicopter. I hear you. It's a lot of traffic, as you know, in Western PA. I wish I could arrive in a helicopter everywhere I go, but we're going to talk about it. That's going to be a thing. I'm not obsessed with you. Nobody else is in a helicopter. And then I did actually get him to talk one time in the midst of a scrum after a game where he took 45 minutes to change his clothes so we could actually record video and audio and all that. And he then looked at me and said, because I was the only one who didn't leave when everyone just quit in his hour changing clothes. And he said, "So are you just you're just going to make this into a story where AB refuses to talk to the media because you're still chilling here, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, that's, basically, yeah, that's what I'm going to do," because then I would have nothing else. And then he started talking and everyone else came back. So, yeah, I didn't have any real bad AB experiences, but those are two kind of funny AB stories I have. And Ben is that consummate, as you mentioned. He's always been around. He's been through so many different eras. And honestly, it feels like, Ben's not that much older than us either. We've kind of grown up. I'm certainly much more mature than I was 10 years ago. I don't know about you. And Ben Roethlisberger, we've seen his maturation process and his maturity as well, where he went from kind of a guy that maybe was immature, that made some mistakes for sure, that was appearing on WWE Raw, and then to now a guy who became the leader of the team that doesn't even want the team to have music in the locker room. And became a leader of this team through different eras and put up these numbers and became the Hall of Famer, having to deal with Antonio Brown and all of that, and just being able to continue on. And he does have that distinction of all of the Hall of Fame quarterbacks that are out there. He's the one that finished with the same franchise that he started and did it the longest. So he's the only one out there of all those legends to play with one franchise, 18 years, do it that long, and then not go elsewhere. Kind of a special thing. Does fit with Pittsburgh. We'll see what his future holds, but it's no longer being a quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers, at least not in a home game, maybe one more week overall, and then we'll see when that career finishes out for Big Ben, or if we can get some crazy story where he ends up elsewhere next year. But I doubt it. Yeah, I think he's done here. I think he's done. I don't think we're gonna have any Brett Favre situation occur here with Big Ben. But Daniel, I appreciate the time. I appreciate you staying up a little bit with me, even on your West Coast time, so it wasn't as bad as what I had to deal with.
This was perfect for me. I was like looking at the clock. I was like, man, it's like midnight over there. That sucks. I was like,
it's 1 a.m. right now. Yeah, but the funny thing is, Monday Night Football, Ben's last game. This is tons of engagement. But yeah, yes. 1 a.m, and I'm not nearly done after we wrap up this show, so I'll be getting home maybe 3 a.m.
I know the grind, Mike. I get it. I get it, man. I get it. I know what you're doing, man, and you do a good job at it. You do a great job at it, man. I know this is one of the things that you forget. You have all these friends in the media and all that stuff too, and it's like you forget. Sometimes you just forget to say that you do a great job. You know what I mean?
I appreciate it.
You do a great job. You do a good job. I know you work hard. I know exactly what you're doing. I know exactly what you're about to be doing until probably 4 a.m. tonight. I know exactly what you're about to go do, where you're about to drive. I get all of that. So I just want to let you know you're doing a great job. You do a great job. And I hope, everyone is appreciative of that. And I just want you to know that, you know what I mean? Because this is something, it's like we know each other. We communicate with each other, but it's like, you forget. You got to give people their flowers. You know what I mean?
I was going to say, on a night where everyone else is giving Ben Roethlisberger his flowers, I am very happy that Daniel Dudley is giving Mike Asti his flowers.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much, man.
Absolutely.
I definitely appreciate it. The Steelers win this game, but it's really an afterthought to this season and even the night, or now the morning, as Ben Roethlisberger caps off his career as a Steelers starter here in Pittsburgh, doing it the right way, a fitting win over the team he and franchise he's owned the most, that he grew up actually rooting for, and does it against the Cleveland Browns on Monday Night Football. Daniel Dudley, I appreciate the time, man. We'll be talking.